Tonight on Fifth Gear, we're going totally Ferraris.
That's right, we're devoting the entire programme to a marque that evokes speed, beauty and passion more than any other in the history of motoring.
A few weeks ago, we asked you to vote on our website for your favourite Ferrari, the one you'd most like to have in your garage.
And tonight, we're going to reveal those results.
Your top 10 favourite Ferraris.
But before we reveal which ones came where, what is it about this prancing horse that really gets the blood flowing?
Well, it all began over half a century ago with this man, Enzo Ferrari. Initially a driver for Alfa Romeo, his obsession with racing spurred him to go solo. Adopting the squadron badge of a famous Italian fighter pilot, Enzo built his own factory in Maranello, near Modena, Italy.
And since those early days in the 40s, the racing track has been pretty good to Enzo. Ferrari have won the World Sports Car Championship 13 times and carried their drivers to 13 Formula One world titles. But fun as it is, racing is far from cheap. So to fund his addiction, Enzo had to start selling road cars. Fast, expensive and exclusive road cars.
So, which Ferrari is the nation's favourite? Well, in a radical move, we've decided to start at number 10 and work our way to the top.
And kicking off our ranking in 10th place is the Dino. And because of its legendary styling and great handling, it undoubtedly deserves a position in the nation's favourites. But there's one angry man who thinks it should have come higher.
I mean, look at it. It's the first Ferrari road car I ever fell in love with. It was their first mid-engine production car, and it's got such beautifully proportioned lines, you just want to take it to bed with you. It was also the first Ferrari I ever drove, and the first that didn't need an element of bravery to drive it. OK, I know it's only got 198 horsepower and you get that sort of figure in a hot hatch nowadays. When I first borrowed one from a friend who was slightly better off than I was, I stepped straight from a Morris 1000 into a Ferrari Dino. And believe me, 188 horsepower then felt like an awful lot. Of course, in modern terms, it's not the most brilliant of drives. It's got this awful Italian driving position with a steering wheel right down on my knees. But you tend to forgive it all of that just because you love it so. Handling-wise, it was very safe and solid mid-engine, a bit of mild understeer, no sudden oversteer that the Ferraris of before have been more famous for. And of course, all the time whilst you're driving, you're peering between those two beautiful, curvaceous front wings. So the Dino was my childhood sweetheart. And it's also the first of 3 cars in the top 10 to benefit from a bit of screen magic. In their early 70s TV series The Persuaders, Roger Moore and Tony Curtis played wealthy playboys who, in the south of France for the opening episode, couldn't resist a little race. While Moore's Aston DBS obviously had more straight-line grunt, it was simply no match for the Dino when the straights turned into bends. It just goes to show the power of TV to make cars into legends.
By the time Ferrari stopped making the Dino in 1974, they'd sold 3,000 of them, and it's still one of the best-known classic Ferraris today.
But not all of your favourite Ferraris were mass-produced. In fact, your 9th-placed car is one of only 3 ever built. This is a 330 P4, which apparently won some races somewhere. Thank you, viewers, for bringing it to my attention.
Tom, this car didn't just win a few races. This is the car that restored Italy's pride. In 1966, Ford arrived with their GT40 and stole Ferrari's world sports car crown. This car, in 1967, the P4, won it back for them.
Well, hang on, Tiff, it said at Le Mans in 1967 it was beaten by the Ford.
That's just Le Mans. One round of the World Championship where the great long straights of Le Mans allowed the Detroit muscle to beat it in that race. But around corners, the P4 outhandled the GT40. And let's face it, it's 10 times more beautiful than that Detroit brick.
Yes, boys, but I think the nation's number 8 favourite Ferrari is even better to look at. It's the 250 GT California Spider. I'd call it irresistible. Now, there's probably no such thing as an undesirable Ferrari, but when it's a classically styled two-seater roadster from the 1950s, it's about as glamorous as you can get.
The California Spider is unashamedly gorgeous. Every crease, every curve, every catch and every shut line gives nothing but sheer visual pleasure.
Aimed primarily at the American market, hence the name, it was built to cruise rather than race. But you can't ignore the fact that it's still capable of 135 miles an hour and will nail 60 in around 7 seconds, which is pretty impressive for something from the 1950s.
But not for 1 second do I feel the need to gun that lazy V12. All I want to do is sit back, stroke the throttle and pretend I'm Audrey Hepburn all day long. And I'm sure it does live up to its romantic promise on a warm summer's evening, because even on a cold December day in London, it gets its fair share of admiring glances.
So, how much do you have to pay to be eternally in vogue? Well, according to one of only 3 owners in the UK, the price of entry to the California Spider Club is between £600,000 and £1 million.
The California Spider is undoubtedly a very beautiful car, but the car that you voted in at number 7 is what many people consider to be Enzo Ferrari's masterpiece. This little puppy, probably the most expensive thing I've ever touched, is a 250 GTO. Cost to you, £5 million, and that's if you can find one. Record auction price, £10 million.
The GTO was born in 1963 to meet new racing homologation rules. Enzo got his engineer, Giotto Bizzarini, to style the car rather than the usual Pininfarina. And didn't he do well?
The 250 GTO is one of those cars that's so valuable that there's still a market for accurate replicas. Not this one, though. This is one of the multi-million-pound originals.
But why spend millions on an old Ferrari when you can buy a new one?